If you read up on strings, you will learn that there are two different types, closed and open ended. The closed strings are O shaped loops that float about like angels, insouciant of space time's demands and playing no part in our reality. It is the open ended strings, the forlorn, incomplete U shaped strings whose desperate ends cling to the sticky stuff of the universe. It is they that become reality's building blocks, its particles, its exchanges of energy, the teeming producers of all that complication. Our universe, one could almost say, is actually built out of loneliness, and that foundational loneliness persists upwards to haunt every one of its residents. But might the situation be different in other universes? In a universe where, for instance, all the strings were closed, what would love look like there? This is an excerpt from a book that I recently read called Skippy Dies by Paul Murray. And I think it is a perfect example of why fiction matters in a world where consumption has been boiled down to short term and usually fact driven content as well. This excerpt that I just read out has its basis in string theory, an extremely complicated physics topic that no one except physicists can even pretend to understand. But it uses this super complicated concept, explains it in a few lines, and then gives it the philosophical meaning that all of us need in order to connect to such topics in the first place. And it is one of the reasons why, in my opinion, fiction is so important. Nonfiction is the basis of all of our knowledge, research, inquisitivity, creativity, the hypothesis method. All of this is the reason why we know everything that we know. And obviously, we need these things. But the common man isn't someone who's going to relate to that. It's not that people will always want to hear these long explanations or always need these kind of things. But something that human beings have always needed since the beginning of civilization or even before is stories. Civilization was built on stories. It was built on myths, stories told about our ancestors, stories told about things happening in a neighboring city that no one had heard of. And that is what we've literally known civilization to be. So many parts of our society we only know about because people told stories about it. Otherwise, these bits of information would have been lost to time. Nobody was writing these things down. They were oral traditions that were told. And it is one of the most significant ways why fiction is important, even today. And this ties back so significantly to society today, where readership is decreasing, and also readership in fiction is decreasing. Self help is one of the most popular genres that people publish today, and people are reading it like crazy. But nobody is paying attention to fiction. It's almost as if people have lost the ability to imagine that fiction could actually have the same kind of consequences that your self help books can give you. If I picked up a physics book, chances are that I could learn this information, but instead I learned them in Skippy Dies instead. And I think this was so much of an improved experience for me because I learned it through the lens of human emotion. It wasn't just dull facts. It wasn't just how this information could help me or benefit me or my loved ones. It was just human connection, just human emotion, which is what a lot of us need today. That feeling of connection, not through anything out of requirement, but just out of relatability. This book is actually about a lot of concepts. It follows a group of young boys in boarding school and it kind of talks about the struggles that they have. Um, Usually, these boys are struggling with growing up, mostly coming of age, but also some darker themes such as divorce, drugs, and obviously relationship problems. And this book beautifully explores all of these things. It also explores bullying, but also explores the problems that their teachers are going through at the same time. And through all of this, it explains these problems in such a human way that I'm able to empathize with these characters that I don't think I would be able to otherwise. If I had otherwise read a book about drug abuse in high schoolers, I would have probably brushed it off and said, well, whatever, I guess. But the fact that they made it seem so human and that they related those problems to me that makes kids do drugs in the first place made me sit and think about why drug use among young people are on the rise, why people are susceptible to such things in the first place. And I think this kind of human level really helped me associate with a problem that otherwise I would never have thought too deeply about, because it would have felt too far away from my own reality and too far away from my own life. I would have never been able to empathize with it. And that's why fiction plays such an important role in helping us empathize with situations that we would have otherwise never even imagined, never even thought about imagining, because we would have thought ourselves to be too far above these things. In a very similar way, movies also do the same thing. Movies are stories told on a screen, and for whatever reason, people are connecting more to movies these days than anything written down. And I'm not going to pit one against the other or say that books are better than movies, because I generally think each genre has its own merit. But I think the thing that a book allows you to do is make up your own interpretations. The author is never really telling you how to feel about a certain topic. You're kind of free to read it and make up your own mind about these characters, have your own emotions, go through your own kind of circular motion of this reading fiction. When I'm watching a movie, I'm simply lost in what the characters are doing. But when I'm reading a book, more often than not, I end up thinking about something that has happened in my own life. And in this way, I think books are able to delve deeper into what actually fiction is supposed to do. And a part of her is thinking about feminism. A part of her is thinking of all the women who fought for their rights and feeling ashamed for letting them down. Because as the story of his infidelity unspools, she feels only an agonizing crumbling, a horrible literal disintegration, as though she's turned into slush and cascaded all over the floor. He tells her how he doesn't know how he feels, he doesn't know what he wants, and all she wants is for him to mop her up and gather her together as she was. She wants to plead and beg and cry so that he'll unsay what he's just said. Holding her in his arms, tell her that nothing has changed and everything is all right. But of course, that is not what happens. The excerpt that I just read are feelings of a very side character of the novel. She is not a protagonist, she's not even related to the protagonist. But in just one paragraph, the author has kind of drilled down so much of what we know is a problem, or not even a problem, but something that a lot of women, I think, struggle with. It's not a main theme in the novel. It's something that most people would probably forget about if they just read the novel on surface level. But it is something that stood out to me as a personal experience. And in just this one paragraph, it kind of sunk in a way that I don't think any other piece of media could, because it wasn't just what he was saying. It wasn't just what the character was doing, which is because she's not the protagonist. It was just the fact that I could interpret it in my own way. And that is what is so important about reading books and reading fiction, that nobody reads the same book. Everyone reads a different book because everyone's interpretation is different. And also, the things that are important in a novel is also decided by the reader. It's a very personal experience to read a book. And I think people are losing touch with these things. People have stopped reading, and people have stopped kind of understanding what fiction really means. Even the most popular fiction books are popular for their tropes and kind of the surface level plot. They're not popular for what they're actually teaching us about human emotion, because we've we've stopped looking so deeply at things. And I think fiction can really reteach these elements. They can tell us the things that we are missing about our human emotion, about human connections, and even just how to be a person. And which is why I think it's so important for some people to engage with some kind of fiction. I'm not trying to be an elitist, and I'm not trying to be like I'm better than someone because I read fiction. I genuinely just think it would help everyone in ways that they cannot even imagine if they pick up a fiction book, even just once a year.